During this Purushottama month to do some service. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Jaya Gopi Janavallabha Girivardhari Jaya Gopi Janavallabha Girivardhari Yashodanandana Vraja Janaranjana Yashodanandana Vraja Janaranjana Yashodanandana Vraja Janaranjana Yamunatira Vanachara Yamunatira Vanachara Yamunatira Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Giri Govardhan Giri Govardhan Jaya Giri Govardhan Jaya Krishna Balaram Krishna Balaram Krishna Balaram Jaya Krishna Balaram Jaya Gaura Nitai Jaya Gaura Nitai Gaura Nitai Jaya Gaura Nitai Jaya Jaya Prabhupada 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 Jaya Nitai Gaura Hari 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 Jai Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivraj Gacharya Astatarasta Shri Shrimad Abhay Charanaravind Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivraj Gacharya Astatarasta Shri Shrimad Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Maharaj Ki Ananta Koti Vaishnavinda Ki Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Prem Sakaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Vedagadadhar Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrindiki Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopinath Shama Kund Radha Kund Giri Govardhan Ki Vrindavan Dham Ki Mayapur Navadvip Dham Ki Nilachal Jagannath Puri Dham Ki Ganga Maya Jamana Maya Ki Tulsi Devi Bhakti Devi Ki Jai Shri Purushottam Ki Harinam Sankirtan Ki Jagat Guru Srila Prabhupada Ki Samaveta Bhakta Vrinda Ki Gaur Prema Nande Hari Hari Bol. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories, all glories, all glories to Shri Guru and Gauranga. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. So the topic is Purushottam Yoga, understanding the Supreme Person, based on Bhagavad Gita chapter 15. That's quite loud actually.
It's okay.
So, have you discussed chapter 15 previously this month?
No, just one verse.
Okay. So, we're going to be ambitious. We're going to try to understand as much of chapter 15 as possible. So, you get a chance to go through many of the verses. So, this Purushottam month is very, very significant. It's rare because it comes in the cycle of every 3 years, almost. Not completely 3 years, but almost 3 years. We spoke briefly about this on Saturday when we went Vedlam. So devotees, regular devotees know about the significance of Purushottam month. Srila Prabhupada didn't really emphasize Purushottam month. He didn't really speak about it much. But then as we get more developed or develop more into the Vedic practices, then more and more becomes revealed. And we see what the scriptures say, how valuable this month is. So who knows how this month comes about?
According to the lunar calendar, I think. Is it? Follows the lunar calendar. Something about the lunar calendar.
Something about the lunar calendar. Right. So we?
It's to line up the lunar and solar calendar.
Is to line them up. Why do we have to line them up?
Sankarshan Prabhu knows. What's the answer? He's keeping quiet. He knows he's not saying.
So the time is calculated on the transit of the sun and the moon. So if you look at our planetary systems, then you can think of the sky above us like a dome. So when the sun moves in the day, you'll find, or if you look up at the night sky, you'll see all the fixed constellations, we call them. So the sun actually transits through those constellations throughout. Takes 12 months to go to each constellation. Like you have in the Western calendar, the signs, Taurus, Pisces. So that's called Sakranti, Sankranti, the sun. It's transiting through there. But the moon is only around the earth. Now the whole system, we are on a plane called Bhumandal. So that whole Bhumandal is also moving, spinning. So the sun takes those 12 transit periods, which is the 365 days, which is also it looks like the sun is moving, but our earth is actually going around the sun. And therefore we also see the different constellations at different times. First 6 months we see that which is on this side, and then the other 6 months we see what's behind the sun. So that takes approximately 365,2425 days. So therefore it's approximate. And the moon is taking about 29.25, also around there, I think, it's approximately. So the moon takes a shorter period of time, 354 days for it to transit around for 1 lunar year, within that canvas we were talking about. And the sun takes 365. So approximately there's a difference, but if you calculate it specifically the decimal points, it's 10.88, not 11. And in a period of 3 years, we will be short of 32 days between the sun cycle and the lunar cycle. So, because both are important for the calculation of the calendar time, if they do not fix that, the period will then increase more and more and more and more. And in terms of the Vedic astrology, they will not be able to calculate properly all the tithis and all of these periods in which the different auspicious and inauspicious times have to appear. So they align that up. They align it. So every 3 years they make a correction. And they bring them both into alignment again, and then it starts again from there. So in this period also, the sun, in this 1 month, the sun is actually not transiting from one constellation to the other. There's no Sankranti in this month. So that period where there's no Sankranti is known as Adhik Mas. Where it is transiting in the other part, it is a normal, but this is Adhik Mas. And that happens only once in 3 years. So that's how they work that out. Of course, Vedic astrology is very complex. I'm not an expert in astrology or anything, but this is basically the layman's understanding of it. So they make the correction. So now, in the normal calculation, especially in the world, there are those who engage in what is known as karma kanda, fruitive activities, where they engage in understanding the lunar cycle and the auspicious and inauspicious periods for their material life. So because this period comes up as an enigma, then they have no calculations for material auspiciousness or inauspiciousness in this period. So they call it a useless month. Adik means extra, Mas means month. So Adik Mas, extra Mas, but they call it Mala Mas. They say it's so useless, and then they say it's dirty, it's impure, because we can't do anything in this month. We shouldn't do anything. We shouldn't do anything because the month is inauspicious. So, in a Vedic understanding, everything has a personality. Behind every phenomenon, there's a personality. So, like you take Ganga Devi. Ganga is a river, but she's known as Ganga Devi. Why? She's a personality. She's a devotee of the Lord. She's Ganga Devi. In the upper planetary system, she manifests as a person. Higher upper planetary system is known as Mandakini. And she was brought down to this planet by Emperor Bhagirath. So she flows as Ganga. But for those who are devotees and pure devotees and so on, they can see this personality. They can see Ganga Devi. They get the darshan of Ganga Devi. What about Tulsi Maharani? The plant, we think of as a plant. We have a lot of awe and reverence, but we have to always remember that she's a personality. She's a devotee of the Lord in the spiritual world. Yamuna Devi. Himalaya Parvat. All are personalities, great mountains and so on. So like that. So Adik Mas Devi is a personality. So when she started hearing all of these insults to her, and that she's so useless, she's impure, so she became very disturbed about that. She started to cry, and in her crying, with such depression, she fainted. And Garuda took pity on her, came with Vishnu, and using his wings he fanned her and revived her. When she woke up, she sees Narayan and Vishnu, and she started to lament about her situation. This is in Padma Puran. Also, I think it's in Mahabharata where Lord Krishna goes to see the Pandavas on exile and explains to them why they had to suffer all of these things. They were suffering because they did not follow the Purushottam Mass. So, just some synopsis. So anyway, it's explained, and then Vishnu takes pity on her and says, "You're a devotee. You can't, you should not lament like this." So he carries her, and they go to Goloka Vrindavan to see Krishna. So now you think, isn't Vishnu Krishna? And now he's going to see Krishna, how's the confusion there? So Vishnu is an expansion. Ete chamsa kala pumsa Krishna astu Bhagavan soyam. These portions and plenary portions of portions, they are all expansions of Krishna. But Krishna, Astu Bhagavan Swami, is original personality. Which reminds me about how when Lord Brahma went to see Krishna in Garga Samhita, it's explained that the demigods, when the world was overburdened with the force of kings, demoniac kings, then Bhumi went to complain and asked Krishna to come. For Krishna's Janmashtami is preceded by that. So they go to the banks of this Svetadvip ocean, and they pray, and Lord Brahma represents the demigods. They pray and they get a voice, Akashvani. That's the normal. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. That's the normal understanding. But then Garga Samhita explains how Vishnu in Svetadvip, he says, I can't help with this, let us all go see Krishna. So it's explained in Garga Samhita, they all get into this transcendental boat because they have to cross the ocean, right? The causal ocean. So they go across, and as they cross, it's described how the earth is receding and becoming the size of a pea. They can see they're going up to Goloka Vrindavan, and they go through Vaikuntha, they come, and eventually they disembark, and they see this lotus, pink lotus, glaring effulgence, and they go up and eventually come to the center of the whirl of the lotus, and they're guarding where these female guards of Krishna, and they present their credentials and why they've come to see Krishna. And then she goes and tells Krishna, and then Krishna tells her to ask. Oh, Lord Brahma says, tell him Lord Brahma has come. So Krishna sends a message back, which Brahma? Because, and then Brahma is bewildered. He said, what do you mean? I'm Brahma. He didn't know this, Brahmas, because there's millions of universes. So there'll be millions of Brahmas, millions of Shivas, and billions of Vishnus, because in every universe, the three guna avatars are expanded in every universe. So many of us are thinking small, this was one universe, millions of universes. So then when Lord Brahma, eventually they enter and get the darshan of Krishna, and while Radha and Krishna on the throne, golden throne, and while they're watching, there comes this chariot with a green figure of Ram, and he just enters into Krishna's body. And while they're watching, then you see Shingadev is entering, and all the different incarnations of Krishna, they're just entering into his body. Then Brahma understood Krishna is the Supreme Lord here. And these are the incarnations. So that was just the point we're making about when now Narayan takes Devi to seek Goloka Vrindavan, and then she's crying and she's sobbing and crying. And Krishna says, this is Goloka Vrindavan. Who can be unhappy here? What is the problem? And then she describes, Krishna feels so compassionate towards her. Says, do not worry. You are now to be considered my wife. I shall marry you. So she becomes one of Krishna's wives. And I bestow upon you my name. You have no name for this month, so now you can take my name. Purushottam Mas. The month Mas will now be named my name, Purushottam. So Purush, Adi Purush is Krishna, the original Supreme Personality, original enjoyer, Adi Purush. And Purush Uttama, Uttam, highest, that's supreme. So Purushottama becomes Purushottama. Purushottama, Purushottam Mas. And because Krishna's name is non-different from him, then all the qualities and all the auspiciousness, all the potencies of Krishna invested in this month. And for the devotees then, this month is most auspicious. So if people say you don't do anything for your material life in this month and so on, yeah, don't do anything for your material life. Do it for your spiritual life. So the month is auspicious, all auspicious for that. If Krishna wants, it's his prerogative what he'll grant you in this month. But the month is for you to focus on your spiritual development. Therefore, it's all auspicious. If you focus on your spiritual life, it's all auspicious. If you focus on the temporary, you will lose. Right? If you sacrifice the permanent for the temporary, then you're a loser. So the whole world is setting themselves up to fail because they are focusing on the temporary. So we focus on the permanent, then it's all gain. Everything is gain. And the permanent is only the Supreme Personality of Godhead and His devotional service. So it's recommended then in this month we should read chapter 15, because chapter 15 in Sanskrit is called Purushottam Yoga. So because it's a name of Krishna, it's Purushottam Yoga. And the chapter itself is teaching us how to extricate ourselves from the material entanglement. And another reason is that the Acharyas and Srila Prabhupada told us also this is an important chapter. The Acharyas say it's an important chapter to read. So there's like 3 reasons we can give for that. So chapter 15, we thought we'll try to be ambitious and see how much we can speak about chapter 15 and just the essential points. So there's 20 verses in chapter 15. This is a fairly short chapter. So I usually present this for my classes, Bhakti Shastri class, so I'd give them a little slide. So I'll just give you a background. The chapter 15's 20 verses are broken up like this. Verses 1 to 5, it speaks about a banyan tree and detachment. Verses 6 to 11, Krishna describes transmigration. That's where the actual Purushottam Yoga, linking to the Supreme, begins from that. And then verses 12 to 15, talks about Krishna as the maintainer. And then 16 to 20 is an important aspect which is known as the Shloki Bhagavad Gita. It's a summary of all the teachings of Bhagavad Gita and speaks about also 3 very important processes: Sambandha, Abhideya and Prayoja in that. So because we're amongst mostly devotees here, then we can talk a little bit more about that. And when you go out to a public program and so on, you may not necessarily get into that. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
So chapter 15, Purushottam Yoga, translated in English as the Yoga of the Supreme Person. So we won't read all the Sanskrit, but 1 or 2 just for the auspiciousness. Shri Bhagavan Uvacha Urdvamulam Adhashakam Ashvatam Prabhuravyayam Chadamsi Yasya Panani Yastam Veda Sa Vedavid. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, it is said that there is an imperishable banyan tree that has its roots upward and its branches down, and whose leaves are the Vedic hymns. One who knows this tree is the knower of the Vedas. So Krishna is speaking, Shri Bhagavan Uvacha. And what he says, there is a banyan tree, an imperishable banyan tree. It's so complex that it seems imperishable. You cannot really destroy this. You don't know where it starts, where it ends. It's so complex. And why does he use a banyan tree? Ashvata. There are many different types of banyan trees, but they display similar qualities. Have you seen a banyan tree? There's there in the botanical gardens at the gate. You see that huge tree? That's a banyan tree. What's peculiar about it? Yeah, it's like a complicated mesh of roots and stems, branches. You don't know where it begins, where it ends. So you got, I'm not sure any ants on this because I'm feeling some. So the trees, when you see the branches going out and then there are like extensions this way and extensions that way, you don't know which is a branch, which is a root. It's just a complex system. And therefore it becomes a very appropriate analogy to describe the material world, the complexity of the material world. We don't call it the World Wide Web for nothing. It's like everything's trapped, a mesh there. So Krishna is saying there's an upside down tree, banyan tree. Have you ever seen an upside down banyan tree? Anyone? In the normal, you are walking in the park, you see an upside down. But you have seen one. You're just not focusing where. Where have you seen it, Shankasha?
The reflection.
In a reflection next to a lake. The tree is growing on the bank. If you look at it from the other side, when it's still, the tree is upside down. In there. So what is the original tree representing and what's the upside down tree representing? Yes? Again, sorry? Which is which? The original tree standing upwards is the spiritual world, and the reflection is the material world. So this is, if you look at your word for word, it says, Udva Mulam, the roots are above, and the branches, Adha Sakam, are downwards. So this is referring to the material tree now. Upside down, the roots are above, and you're going downwards, the branches are downwards. And that line that's dividing the spiritual world and the material world is the desire of the living entity. Because the living entity in the spiritual world desires to be independent of the Lord, then the material world is created for that living entity. So it's actually the desire that creates the material reflection. Now why is it a reflection? Is a reflection real?
Yes, it is.
Hello? Is it real?
It is real.
Mataji?
It is real.
It is real, yes. So the material world is real. We do not say it doesn't exist. But what about it that makes it an illusion?
It's temporary.
It's temporary. Just like sometimes when the wind is blowing, there's no reflection. If anybody disturbs and distorts the water, there's no reflection. So sometimes the material world is manifest, sometimes it's not manifest. So therefore that makes it illusory. The material world is temporary. So because it's temporary, it's an illusion. So in this tree, this upside down tree, it's described in this verse that the leaves are the Vedic hymns. So a tree that's barren without leaves doesn't look so attractive. But when it has full of leaves, then it's so attractive. So therefore the leaves are being compared to the Vedic hymns. That superior knowledge that's given to us in this world to assist the living entity and make his otherwise barren world filled with auspiciousness. So that is why the Vedic leaves, the leaves have been compared like this. So the person, the Veda Vit is meaning the knower of the Vedas. So if the person knows the Vedas, the person knows the tree, the leaves of this tree, then what will be his position? It'll come up in the next verses. So the knowledgeable person, the Vedavid, is one who is the knower of this tree. Most of us are in the tree and we entangle in the tree, all of us. We don't know the tree. We are not aware of this tree, but the person who is a knower of the tree is aware of it. He is the knower of the Vedas. So that person, that Vedavid, becomes free. So we'll just read some translations about the tree, and then we don't have to discuss everything, but the tree metaphor is being extended, and the aspects of the tree, the metaphor is being compared to different things. So Krishna says the branches, verse 2, the branches of this tree extend downward and upward. We discussed that, right? Nourished by the three modes of material nature. So in this world there are three energies. What are those three modes? Sanskrit words for me, if you know. Satagun, Rajagun and Tamagun, the three modes. So these are the energies in the world that sustain the world. So they're nourished by the three. The twigs are the objects of the senses, what we see. This tree also has roots going down, and these are bound to the fruitive actions of human society. So when we engage in materialistic activities, fruitive, wanting the fruits of our activities, then those bind you in this world. You're bound by the consequences. So in this tree you'll find lots of different living entities. Now it's an upside down tree, the roots are on the top. So the top represents the heavenly planets. Middle represents the middle planetary system where we are, Earth. And then below that is the Patala planets. Patala, Rasasthala, Tala, all of these different hellish planets. Ratatala. So these are going down. And there's 7 upper planetary systems, there's 7 below, and the Earth is in the middle. So there are different living entities on the branches of this tree. The upper planetary systems are the demigods. The middle are the humans and the cows and the animals and all that belong to our planet. Of course there are, this Surabhi Lok also, where there's Krishna's cows up there. But here we're talking about our living entities here. And then in the lower planetary systems will be the demonic and so on. Alright, so in that purport, Srila Prabhupada will explain further about the aspects of the tree, the tips of the branches, etc. And then he speaks about the real root being Brahma Loka. Text 3 to 4, the real form of this tree cannot be perceived in this world. It's so vast. It is so complex. You are in it. You can't see it. You're in it. You're in the matrix. Right? The real form of this tree cannot be perceived in this world. No one can understand where it ends, where it begins, and where its foundation is. So it's no use, in other words, trying to figure it out with this small brain of ours. We can't figure it out. It's just too vast. It is imperishable banyan tree. So what should we do then? Rather than try to waste our energy on that, but with determination, one must cut down the strongly rooted tree with a weapon of detachment. And the Sanskrit word for that in the word for word is Asanga shastrena. Asanga shastrena. Asanga, to detach yourself. Sangha, to come together. Asanga, to be isolated, to detach. Shastrena, weapon. So shastrena and shastra. Shastra and shastra, two Sanskrit words sound very similar, but shastra means scripture and shastra means weapon. So with a weapon of knowledge, one should cut through. So the weapon of detachment, one should cut through this strongly rooted tree with a weapon of detachment. Thereafter, one must seek that place from which, having gone, one never returns. And there surrender to that Supreme Personality of Godhead, from whom everything began and from whom everything is extended since time immemorial. So Prabhupada used to use that analogy. If your house is on fire, you don't start to look for where it started, where the fire started. You get out of the house that's on fire, and then you can figure it out later. Right? So we are in an emergency situation here. This house is on fire. So one has to search the origin of the tree. And how we do that? Prabhupada says in the purport, anyone wants to take a try? How do we search out the origin of the tree? If you got your Bhagavad Gita, you may be reading it. It's in the first paragraph. But anybody wants to try? How do we search out? Sandhu? How did you come to Krishna consciousness? How did you search it out? That's right, by the association of persons with the knowledge of that Supreme Personality of Godhead. That's how you cut through this tree. Then by understanding, one becomes gradually detached from this false reflection of reality. Is that what happened? And by knowledge, one can cut off the connection and actually become situated in the real tree. So it's a matter of changing your consciousness, because people say, oh, I'm working, I'm living in this world. You hear that all the time. I'm living here in this world and so on. How am I going to do this? I got business, I got children, I got cats and dogs. What I must do? So it's about changing the consciousness, because you are living in this world, but you don't want to live in the illusion of the world. You want to live in situated in the real tree. So how do we do it? So Prabhupada gives the formula. As a result of such discussion in the association of devotees, one comes to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Then the first thing one must do is surrender unto Him. How do you surrender to Him? What's the first sign of your surrender? Yes, Maji? Chant the holy name. You accept Krishna's name and you begin to chant. Krishna Eka Sharana. That is the first thing. Because now you develop your faith that the holy name is not different from Krishna. The holy name will help me. Even if you come with some material desire, it's fine. You chant the holy name. 4 different types of people come. Now, who is eligible to enter this kingdom? Text 5. So the Vedavid, the knower of the Vedas, will have these qualities, at least will advance. Those who are free from false prestige, illusion and false association, who understand the eternal, who are done with material lust, who are freed from dualities and happiness and distress, and who, unbewildered, know how to surrender unto the Supreme Person, attain to that eternal kingdom. So when we read that, then we feel disappointed. Like, what? How do I'm full of false prestige, I got false association, I'm not done with material lust, I don't know I'm not free from the duality, the happiness and distress, I get bewildered, how now? So it's a gradual process. When you surrender yourself to Krishna and you chant, then you find that your illusion will diminish. You find that you become more humble, so your false prestige. You start to understand the eternal. And whatever lustful propensities we have, they will also diminish. They will become like snakes without fangs. And then, as you see, you find the dualities of happiness and distress, you understand it more, as Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, in the 2:14. Matrasparsas kuntaya sitoshna shuka dukada agama pahino anityas tam titikshashva bharata. The non-permanent appearance of happiness and distress are like the winter and summer seasons. The appearance of the winter and summer season. They arise from sense perception, no sign of Bhara. And one has to tolerate them. So it's only because of our senses we are seeing happiness, distress, because it's our sense experience of the body. But the spirit soul, identifying with the body, is thinking, I am experiencing this, I am experiencing that. So as you become more spiritual, then you'll be more in touch with your original consciousness. Therefore you find the advanced devotees, they're so able to deal with both happiness and distress. You see, like, people get amazed when you go to a devotee's house, somebody passed away. They don't look so overcome by the distress. They feel the loss, but they're not hysterical about it. And within a short space of time, you see them back in the temple doing their service and carrying on.
They accept it.
It's easier to accept it with understanding. So, text 6. So Krishna then describes, so this is the section B of that, where we are now talking about, so we spoke about the banyan tree and detachment. Now Krishna will speak about the transmigration. So he begins to speak about his supreme abode. The supreme abode of mind is not illumined by the sun or moon, nor by fire or electricity. Those who reach it never return to this material world. Krishna established that previously also, Janma Karma Chami Divyam, right? That one who understands the nature of my appearance and activities. Very good. So we have a very wise, learned audience. So Krishna speaks about the Krishna Loka, there's no need. So the actual light in the spiritual world is the effulgence of Krishna. Effulgence coming from Krishna, effulgence coming from his Goloka Vrindavan, permeating the whole atmosphere. So all the way down to Vaikuntha is fully bright. But this world is the world of darkness. It's diametrically opposed. It's a reflection, so there's no light here. So as long as the living entity is in this dark material world, he's in conditional life. But as soon as he reaches the spiritual sky, by cutting through the false, perverted tree of this material world, he becomes liberated. Then there's no chance of his coming back here. In his conditional life, the living entity considers himself to be the lord of this material world. But in his liberated state, he enters the spiritual world and becomes an associate of the Supreme Lord. There he enjoys eternal bliss, eternal life, full knowledge. That word is Satchidananda, right? You remember, good. So Prabhupada is emphasizing, one cannot become detached from the attraction of the material world simply by dressing himself in saffron cloth. He must become attached to the devotional service of the Lord. So therefore we don't preach to people detachment. We preach to them attachment. Attach yourself to Krishna, attach yourself to devotional service, then what will happen? You'll automatically become detached. You'll give up the lower taste when you get the higher taste. Now Prabhupada here is in this about this dressing himself in saffron cloth. He's referring to the Gyanis and the impersonalists, sannyasis. So their process, they feel, is that I must detach myself from the world, and it's an artificial detachment. I must just, they think they must just give up everything and put on the saffron, and in that way now become detached from the world. But you may do that, but your desires are still there. Therefore, Prabhupada is quite, I'd say, chastising. One cannot become detached from the attraction of the material world simply by dressing himself in saffron cloth. It's a state of consciousness, and when you do that, and when you're at that point, then you can accept that. The living, this is a good verse, famous one. Text 7. Mama vamso jiva loka, jiva bhuta sanatana, mana shasta indriyani prakrita sthani karshati. The living entities in this conditional world are my eternal fragmental parts. So they have the same nature of Krishna. But due to conditional life, they are struggling very hard with the 6 senses. We only know 5. Which is the 6th? The mind. It says which include the mind. So Krishna explains in the purport his expansions, that his direct expansion are known as Vishnu Tattva, and they include Lord Ram, Nishingadev, Vishnu, and all the deities in the Vaikuntha planets. And then he speaks of the living entities, which are called, Prabhupada explains, the separated expansions. And they are eternally the servants. Prabhupada uses this word fragmental parts and parcels. Text 8. The living entity in the material world carries his different conceptions of life from one body to another as air carries aromas. Thus he takes one kind of body and again quits it to take another. So here transmigration is being described. So the living entity has 5 gross elements which make up the gross body, and what are they? And right. Earth, water, fire, air, because there's a gradation of subtlety. Earth is the most gross. Water, fire, air, ether is the most subtle of them. These are called elements. And then above that, mind, intelligence, and false ego, which make up what body? So you've got the gross body of these 5, and you've got the subtle body, which includes the mind. And more subtle than that is the spirit soul. The soul is also an element, but it's a spiritual element. So you've got the gross element, you've got the subtle element, and you've got the spiritual element. Now, the mind is the repository of all the sense experiences. So your mind can be your best friend or your worst enemy. And you know that the mind is always vacillating, it's always restless. Chanchala mana Krishna. Right? Chanchala mana, the mind. All the time. And you know that the mind is active because you dream a whole lot of things. You may not remember all your dreams, but they come about and so on. So the experience. So the living entity in the material world carries these different conceptions of life from one body to the other. So like as air carries aromas. So the mind is considered subtle. So air is subtle. It's an analogy now being used to explain how the body, how the soul transmigrates. So when air blows over a rose garden, how does that air smell?
It's got a very sweet aroma.
Very sweet fragrance of roses. The same air blows over the garbage heap. What happens? Stench. So that the mind, the conception, if the mind has very sweet and spiritual conceptions, it'll carry the spirit soul to the sweet and spiritual destination. But if the mind is troubled by agitated and sinful desires, they'll carry the same spirit soul to an appropriate body where it can continue those desires. In one sense, it's not actually a punishment. The material nature is giving you the situation you desire without the other encumbrances, so you can enjoy that situation, or you can be in that situation. Right? So if you want to exercise some kind of gross eating habits and so on, then you may get a body that you can continue to that. Maybe a pig's body, then you can stay in the drain the whole day and slobber all that.
It's like mind over matter.
In one sense, it'll be mind over matter if you can control your mind. If you spiritualize your mind, then the mind is no more material. But if the mind remains in this world, then it continues to be. It's because what will happen is eventually, if your mind, intelligence are absorbed in Krishna, then you no more have a false ego, because you'll have a real ego. And the real ego means you know your spirit soul. So then there's no more a subtle body. The subtle body has become purified. You are a pure spirit soul in this body. Srila Prabhupada is an example of that. Right, so maybe we'll just do 2 more to get to the next section, and I'll stop there, which is good. I'll read it quickly. The living entity thus, so what happens when you take the next gross? The living entity thus taking another gross body obtains a certain type of ear, eye, tongue, nose and sense of touch, which are grouped around the mind. In other words, you get that body that will facilitate your mind. He thus enjoys a particular set of sense objects. The foolish cannot understand how a living entity can quit his body, nor can they understand what sort of body he enjoys under the spell of the modes of nature. But one whose eyes are trained in knowledge can see all this. So therefore the word in the verse is Pashyanti Jnana Chakshush. Jnana means knowledge, Chakshush means you can see. So one in knowledge, one in divine knowledge, you can see all of this. Text 11. The endeavoring transcendentalists who are situated in self-realization can see all this clearly, but whose minds are not developed and who are not situated in self-realization cannot see what is taking place, though they may try to. So Prabhupada in the purport says, in the present day there are so many so-called yogis, but there are many so-called associations of yogis, but they're actually blind in the matter of self-realization. They're simply addicted to some sort of gymnastic exercise and are satisfied if the body is well built and healthy. They have no other information. Even though they're endeavoring in a so-called yoga system, they are not self-satisfied. Such people cannot understand the process of transmigration of the soul. So you see that so many yoga institutions all over the world, and they are promoting yoga as an exercise. They have no, they may at best, they may say it's a method for peace and calm and all of that, and come do your daily, get your weekly yoga dose. And they want to also ensure that their body is fit. So they do the gymnastics, they do the hatha yoga, pranayam, all of these things. And for what? Because as soon as they do that, they go back to the material world so they can enjoy for longer. They want to look younger for longer. They want to have virility for longer so they can enjoy sense gratification for longer. That is what the whole thing is about. And Shivaram Swami made a good analysis of yoga on one of his videos, and he spoke about what has happened to yoga. And then he shows, and he gives, there's a whole lot of different types of yogas going on in the name of yoga. You know, there's something called BA yoga. It's there in his video, but it's just called Shivaram Swami and yoga. They've taken the sacred practice of yoga and transformed it into a mockery. They all come to a studio for yoga and they have a glass of beer there. So they do an exercise and they sip, and they do an exercise and they sip. This is what a gross representation of a sacred process of yoga, which is meant to help you control the senses and mind for the purposes of focusing on Krishna. It's a manual process. It's a mechanical manual process which can take years, many years, hundreds of years. Therefore the yogis are still in the Himalayas practicing. So while that is part of the ladder, yoga ladder, Krishna consciousness is the elevator. You don't have to be one of those yogis. You can simply chant Hare Krishna and you'll rapidly get to the point of absorbing yourself in Krishna. So I'll stop there. And yes, so we came up to verse 11. So you've got 2 weeks to go. You can do the others. So in that way you can complete the whole 20 verses of this chapter in this way. And if you have time, then different devotees can probably prepare 3 or 4 verses and then you can discuss it. Okay, take a question. I've got 5 minutes.
Yes, Prabhu.
Any one question? Suvi, do you want to ask something?
No problem, thank you.
Did it make sense?
It was very
So, text 15 is the very important verse. If there's no question, I'll just focus on that. Yes?
You spoke about Purusha, firstly, and I have come to understand that you also describe Govinda and Purusha. So I wanted to ask, you were saying that the avatars or incarnations of Krishna, like Nrsimhadev and Rama, going into him. So I wanted to ask, is Govinda also an incarnation or another name of Krishna?
Another name for Krishna. Govinda, Gopala. Govinda refers to, Go means the senses. Govinda means that Supreme Lord who is the protector of the senses. So it's a name of Krishna. Gopala. Go in that case are the cows. Krishna is the protector of the cows. So Krishna has different names. Some names are like really sweet. Purushottam is seen as a little formal. Govinda, Gopala is more sweet. So the same, yeah, we're relating Govindam Adi Purusha Tamaham Bhajami. worship it? The primeval Lord. So primeval means that original, Adi, that first personality. Govindam Adi Purushottam Tamaham Bhajami. Govindam Adi Purushottam Tamaham Bhajami. That personality. So Krishna, another name of Krishna is Purushottam, which is Govindam Adi Purushottam. Right? That's okay? Right. So it's that same Krishna that Adik Mas Devi saw, the spiritual world, when she went there. Same Krishna, who lives in the abode of transcendental gems, Chintamani Prakarasa. Tending all the cows, yielding all desire. Served by millions or hundreds and thousands of Lakshmis and Gopis. Yeah. Oh, don't forget the Kalpa Vriksha tree. Chintamani Prakara Satmisho Kalpa Vriksha, the wish fulfilling trees. I worship Gaura, the primeval Lord, in abodes of transcendental gems, surrounded by the Kalpa Vriksha, the wish fulfilling trees yielding all desire. And Krishna's original constitutional position is given in that verse. Prakasatmashu Kalpa Vriksha Lakshavriteshu Surabhira Vipalayantam. The protector of the cows. His original constitutional position of Krishna is given there. So that Krishna gave the name Purushottam. Jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Shri Purushottam Mas ki jai. Srimad Bhagavad Gita as it is ki jai. Gaur Premanande. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees.
Hare Krishna.
All glories, all glories, all glories to Shri Gauranga, all glories to Shri Prabhupada.
Hare Krishna. His Grace Smita Prabhu ki. Hare Krishna Prabhu. Thank you so much. We've learned so much.
Hare Krishna. So yeah, from 12, so text 12 onwards, it will be the section C, in terms of the division of how the themes are